You know what the problem is with most alien species? They have no sense of irony. None. Zero. Zilch. And nowhere was this more apparent than in the grand celestial arena of Vexthor Prime, where approximately 14,000 aliens from 67 different species had gathered to watch what they assumed would be the glorious, brutal, and extremely one-sided dismantling of a human being. Spoiler alert, they were right about the one-sided part. They just had the sides backward. But we are getting ahead of ourselves here. Let us set the scene properly, shall we? Picture, if you will, an arena that makes the Roman Colosseum look like a community center bingo hall. We are talking about a structure 3 miles in diameter, carved from a single piece of crystallized starlight, or some equally pretentious material that the Vexthor loved to brag about. The seats rose in impossible spirals, defying at least 4 laws of physics that humans still understood, and they were packed. Absolutely packed. Standing room only, which is saying something when half your audience does not technically have legs. The air buzzed with anticipation, smelled like ozone and bad decisions, and practically vibrated with the collective smugness of thousands of alien beings who thought they were about to witness humanity getting its long overdue comeuppance. At the center of this magnificent architectural flex stood 2 figures that could not have been more different if they had been specifically designed by a comedy writer with a quota to meet. On one side, champion Kor'thax the Unyielding, supreme warrior of the Vexthor supremacy, holder of 47 consecutive arena victories, bearer of the Crimson Scars of Honor, and probably several other titles that would take another 3 paragraphs to list. He was 9 feet of crystalline-armored murder machine, with 4 arms that each looked capable of bench-pressing a Honda Civic, skin that shimmered with a faint purple iridescence, and eyes that literally glowed red with barely contained aggression. His crystalline armor, grown from his own body through some biological process that human scientists still did not fully understand and frankly found kinda gross, caught the arena lights and threw them back in dazzling, intimidating patterns. On the other side, Marcus Chen, age 32, freight hauler pilot, owner of one very confused expression and a coffee-stained jumpsuit that had definitely seen better days. Height, 5'10". Build, what you might charitably call average, or uncharitably call he should probably hit the gym more. Special abilities, could parallel park a cargo hauler in one try, made excellent scrambled eggs, and possessed what his mother always called more common sense than most people have business having. He was also, at this particular moment, humanity's official champion in a trial by combat that would determine whether the human colony on New Cascadia got to keep existing or got forcibly relocated to somewhere considerably less pleasant. No pressure or anything. Marcus stood there in the center of the arena, hands in his pockets, looking around at the crowd with the expression of a man who had been promised this would be a quick meeting and was now realizing he should have read the fine print. Which, to be fair, he absolutely should have. The Vexthor had really gone all out for this event. Holographic displays floated above the arena, showing various angles of the impending combat. Commentators from a dozen species chattered excitedly in their respective languages, their words auto-translated and broadcast throughout the arena. Energy shields hummed at strategic points, ready to protect the audience from any stray violence. Someone somewhere was selling what passed for popcorn among beings that may or may not have had mouths. It was all very civilized, very orderly, very we are enlightened species who settle our disputes through regulated combat instead of messy warfare. Right. Because nothing says enlightened quite like forcing 2 people to beat each other unconscious, while thousands watch and place bets. The Galactic Council representatives sat in their special viewing box, looking appropriately solemn and impartial, which is to say they looked like they were trying very hard not to smile. There was High Counselor Zexit of the Pravani Collective, her tentacles arranged in what passed for formal posture among her species. Beside her sat Lord Inquisitor Varn, whose species name humans could not pronounce without dislocating something. And of course, there was Arbitrator Kellex, the jellyfish-looking creature who would be refereeing this mess, floating serenely above the arena floor and probably contemplating whatever it is that floating jellyfish aliens contemplate. Up in the human delegation box, Ambassador Maria Rodriguez gripped the railing so hard her knuckles had gone white. She was a career diplomat, had negotiated treaties with 17 different species, had once talked down a Kor'thian war fleet through sheer force of bureaucratic paperwork, and was generally considered one of humanity's sharpest minds. And she had absolutely no idea how this was going to go. "Please tell me he knows what he is doing," she muttered to her aide, Lieutenant James Park, who stood beside her looking equally uncertain. He said, and I quote, "Yeah, sure, whatever, I will figure it out," Park replied, consulting his tablet. That was the entirety of his strategy discussion. Rodriguez closed her eyes. "We are so dead." Back on the arena floor, champion Kor'thax decided it was time to do his pre-fight intimidation routine, because apparently that was mandatory or something. He threw back his massive head and roared, a sound that started somewhere in the subsonic range and climbed up through frequencies that made human teeth ache. The crowd went absolutely wild. Kor'thax beat his four fists against his chest in a complex rhythm, and the crystalline armor rang like bells, like war drums, like the sound of impending doom set to music. Then he activated his holographic display. Because, of course, he had one of those. Images flickered to life above him, showing his previous victories. A Kor'thian berserker crushed into submission, a Pravani warrior drone scattered into its component parts, a Thesyen stone singer reduced to rubble. 47 victories, each one more impressive than the last, each one designed to send a very clear message. You are about to have a very bad day. The crowd ate it up. Chants of Kor'thax. Kor'thax. Kor'thax echoed through the arena, building to a crescendo that probably registered on seismographs 3 continents away. Marcus, for his part, pulled out his phone and checked his messages. Let that sink in for a moment. While a 9-foot alien death machine performed an intimidation ritual that had literally caused opponents to forfeit in the past, while thousands of aliens screamed themselves hoarse, while the fate of an entire human colony hung in the balance, Marcus Chen checked his phone. He had 3 new messages. One from his mom asking when he was coming to visit. One from his ex-girlfriend that he deleted without reading because he knew better. And one from his business partner asking if he could pick up engine parts on his way back. "On my way back," Marcus muttered to himself, thumb typing a response. Optimistic. I like it. Kor'thax finally noticed that his opponent was not paying attention. The champion's eyes flared brighter, and he pointed all 4 arms at Marcus in what was probably meant to be a dramatic gesture. Human. Kor'thax's voice boomed across the arena, amplified by the acoustics, and possibly by some technological assistance. You dare show such disrespect? I am Kor'thax the Unyielding. I have crushed warriors from across the galaxy. I have never known defeat. And you check your primitive communication device. Marcus looked up from his phone, genuinely confused for a moment, as if he had forgotten where he was. Then understanding dawned, and he pocketed the phone with an apologetic shrug. Sorry, man. Had to let my partner know I would be late. You know how it is. He paused. Or do you? Do you have a job? Other than the whole champion thing? This is not a dig. I am genuinely curious about the work-life balance here. The arena went silent. You could have heard a pin drop if pins existed in alien cultures, and if they made sounds when dropped, and if everyone was not too shocked to breathe. Kor'thax's eye twitched. Just a little. But in that moment, every single being in the arena realized something important. This human either had absolutely no fear, or he had absolutely no brain cells. Possibly both. We shall see how funny you find it, Kor'thax growled, his voice dropping to something that was probably meant to sound menacing, but came across more like a frustrated parent, when I am pulling your spine out through your... Okay. Arbitrator Kellex floated forward, its tentacles waving in what might have been alarm. That is quite enough pre-fight banter. Shall we review the rules? Yes? Good. We shall absolutely do that right now. And this, dear readers, is where things started to get interesting. Arbitrator Kellex expanded to roughly twice its normal size, which was apparently how its species indicated importance or authority or possibly just gas. Its translator crackled to life, and it began speaking in that peculiar way that all bureaucratic officials across the galaxy seem to share, overly formal, unnecessarily complex, and with the enthusiasm of someone reading a phone book. Ahem. We are gathered here today in accordance with Galactic Council Resolution 7749B, subsection 12, paragraph. Well, let us skip the legal citations, shall we? Nobody actually reads those anyway. Kelix's tentacles rippled in what might have been amusement. The rules of engagement are as follows. Combat will continue until one participant achieves submission, incapacitation, or voluntary withdrawal of their opponent. Fatalities are discouraged, but not technically prohibited, though there is paperwork, so much paperwork. So let us avoid that if possible, yes. Marcus raised his hand. Actually raised his hand, like he was in 3rd grade and needed to use the bathroom. Kelix paused, apparently as surprised as everyone else. Yes? The human champion has a question. Yeah, quick one, Marcus said, speaking loudly enough to be heard, but without any of the dramatic flair that seemed mandatory in this place. When you say no off-world technology advantages, does that include biological augmentation? Like, if someone's species naturally has 4 arms and crystalline armor that is basically mobile tank plating, that is not considered a technology advantage, right? That is just biology. The arena went quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of quiet. This was the quiet of thousands of beings suddenly realizing that maybe they had not thought this through quite as well as they assumed. Kelix's tentacles stopped rippling. That is correct. Natural biological features are permitted. This is a well-established precedent in... Cool, just checking. Marcus interrupted, nodding thoughtfully. So if I use, say, naturally occurring human biological advantages, that is also totally fine? We are all just working with what evolution or genetic engineering or cosmic dice rolls gave us. That is, yes, that is accurate. Awesome. Just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. Marcus cracked his knuckles, which made a sound that seemed inappropriately small in the massive arena. No takebacks later, right? Kor'thax laughed. It was not a pleasant laugh. It was the kind of laugh that said, I'm going to enjoy this way too much, and I cannot believe this idiot thinks he has any advantages, and possibly I should have eaten a bigger breakfast. The human makes jokes even now. Kor'thax spread all 4 arms wide, playing to the crowd. What biological advantages could your soft, weak species possibly have? You have no armor, no natural weapons. Your species is famous for being fragile. You are so weak that you need machines to survive in half the environments in your own galaxy. He had a point, actually. Humans were kind of squishy compared to most galactic species. No claws, no fangs worth mentioning, no armored hides, no venom, no ability to breathe fire or shoot lasers from their eyes, or any of the other fun biological tricks that evolution had given out to everyone else like party favors. But Marcus just smiled. It was a small smile, the kind that did not quite reach his eyes, the kind that made Ambassador Rodriguez suddenly sit up straighter in her seat because she recognized that expression. It was the same expression her uncle used to get right before he cleaned out everyone at the poker table. You would be surprised, Marcus said quietly, what evolution gives you when your species spends 2 million years as both predator and prey. Before anyone could unpack that statement, Kelix announced, additional rules. No energy weapons, no projectile weapons, no chemical weapons, no biological weapons, no dimensional weapons, no temporal weapons, no. Basically no weapons at all, Marcus said. Got it. Hand to hand only. Correct. Also, the combat area is restricted to the arena floor. The energy shields will prevent any participant from leaving the designated zone. Medical teams are standing by, though I am told the human team consists of one very worried-looking doctor and a first aid kit, while the Vexthor team has a fully staffed regeneration facility. But that is not my concern. Are there any other questions? Marcus shook his head. Kor'thax cracked all 4 sets of knuckles simultaneously, which was honestly pretty impressive from a coordination standpoint. Excellent. Then let us. Wait, Marcus said, holding up a finger. One more thing. After this is over, win or lose, can someone give me a ride back to the spaceport? I left my ship in short-term parking, and those fees are insane. The arbitrator's tentacles went completely still. You are concerned about parking fees? Right now. Have you seen what they charge per hour? It is highway robbery. Well, space highway robbery. You know what I mean. Somewhere in the human delegation box, Lieutenant Park turned to Ambassador Rodriguez. Is he serious right now? Rodriguez was gripping the railing even harder, if that was possible. I genuinely cannot tell if he is the bravest man I have ever met, or if he has completely lost his mind. Why not both? Park suggested. Down on the arena floor, Galaxy had apparently decided that further delay was pointless. It floated upward, tentacles spreading wide, and its voice boomed across the arena with a kind of dramatic flair that suggested it had been practicing this moment in the mirror for weeks. Warriors, take your positions. Kor'thax immediately dropped into a combat stance that probably had a fancy name in his species' martial tradition. Something like the seventh form of the ascending mountain or the stance of infinite pain. His forearms spread in a pattern that covered multiple attack angles. His crystalline armor plates shifted and locked into combat configuration, and his eyes flared so bright that several spectators in the front row had to look away. Marcus put his hands back in his pockets and stood there like he was waiting for a bus. The crowd's confusion was palpable. This was not how champions behaved. Champions were supposed to be fierce, ready, radiating confidence and aggression. They were not supposed to look like they might start whistling casually at any moment. The combat will begin, Galaxy continued, really milking the drama now. When I sound the resonance chime. Participants, prepare yourselves. Kor'thax roared again, because apparently once was not enough. The sound shook the arena, rattled the shields, probably scared some small children somewhere. His armor rang like a war bell, and the holographic displays around him flickered with images of past victories, just in case anyone had forgotten in the last 5 minutes. Marcus yawned. He actually yawned. Not a fake yawn either, but a genuine, jaw-cracking yawn that he politely covered with one hand. Sorry, he said to no one in particular. Early morning. Coffee has not kicked in yet. Human. Kor'thax's voice had risen about 3 octaves, which was actually kind of impressive given his size. You will regret your disrespect. When I am finished with you, they will need to identify you by your dental records. If humans even have those. Do you have those? Yeah, we have those, Marcus confirmed. Teeth are kind of our thing, actually. Well, one of our things. We have got a whole list. A list. Kor'thax sounded genuinely confused now, which was apparently not the emotion he wanted to be feeling right before a fight to the death. Of things we are good at. It is a pretty interesting list. Want to hear it? No. Fair enough. Galaxy, sensing that this could go on forever if left unchecked, decided to just get on with it. The referee raised several tentacles, and a crystalline chime materialized in the air before it, humming with barely contained energy. The entire arena held its breath. 14,000 beings leaned forward in their seats. Betting pools finalized their odds, which were running about 8,000 to 1 against the human, and even that was considered generous by most bookmakers. Ambassador Rodriguez closed her eyes and mouthed what might have been a prayer or might have been a very creative curse. Lieutenant Park pulled up the emergency evacuation protocols on his tablet, just in case everything went completely sideways. Kor'thax tensed, every muscle in his massive body coiling like a spring, his forearms positioning for his signature opening move, the one that had started 47 consecutive victories, the one that had never failed him. Marcus took his hands out of his pockets, and Arbitrator Galaxy struck the resonance chime. The sound that emerged was like nothing Earth had ever produced. It was the sound of crystallized starlight breaking at the molecular level, of quantum harmonics collapsing into classical physics, of mathematics becoming music. It resonated through the arena, through the shields, through the bones of every being present. It meant one thing, and one thing only, fight. Kor'thax exploded into motion. And when I say exploded, I mean it in the most literal sense that physics and biology would allow. 9 feet and approximately 400 pounds of crystalline-armored warrior launched forward with a kind of speed that should not have been possible for something that size. The arena floor cracked under the force of his initial push-off, leaving spiderweb fractures in stone that was supposed to be indestructible. His four arms blurred into motion, executing what the Vex Thor called the Spiral of Infinite Pain, which was a dramatic name for a very practical combat technique. Hit your opponent from 4 different angles simultaneously while your momentum carried you forward like a freight train made of knives and bad intentions. It had never failed. Not once. Not in 47 fights. The crowd roared. The commentators screamed about inevitable human defeat in at least 9 different languages. The holographic displays zoomed in for a better view of what everyone assumed would be a very short, very brutal conclusion. Kor'thax covered the distance between them in less than 2 seconds, his battle cry shaking the arena, his crystalline armor catching the light and throwing it back in dazzling, terrible patterns. 4 arms reached for Marcus, ready to grab, to crush, to demonstrate conclusively why challenging the Vex Thor was a mistake that most species only made once. Marcus stood there, watching the champion approach with the kind of mild interest you might show a moderately entertaining street performance. And then, at the absolute last possible microsecond, before 400 pounds of angry alien turned him into a human-shaped smear on the arena floor, Marcus moved. He stepped to the left. Just 1 step, casual as you please, like he was avoiding a puddle on a sidewalk. Kor'thax, committed to his charge and moving at what was probably close to 40 miles per hour, shot past him. The champion's momentum carried him forward another 10 feet before he managed to stop, his claws scrabbling against the arena floor, throwing up sparks and stone fragments. The crowd's roar turned into a confused murmur. That was not how this was supposed to go. Opponents did not just step aside. They tried to block or dodge more dramatically, or got hit because the spiral of infinite pain was basically unavoidable. They did not just casually sidestep like they were avoiding someone in a grocery store aisle. Kor'thax spun around, eyes blazing with fury and maybe just a tiny hint of embarrassment. "Lucky," he bellowed. "That was luck." "If you say so," Marcus replied, still sounding like he was discussing the weather. The champion charged again, this time with even more fury, even more speed. He mixed up his approach, feinting with his upper arms while his lower arms prepared to grab. It was a more sophisticated technique, one that required years of training to execute properly. Marcus swayed backward, and the grab missed by approximately 3 inches. Then he ducked under a punch that would have taken his head off. Then he sidestepped another charge. Then he did a little half-spin that looked almost lazy, avoiding all 4 arms as they swept through the space where he had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. To the crowd, it looked like Marcus was dancing. An extremely boring dance, with minimal movement and no flair whatsoever, but still a dance. He was not doing anything impressive or athletic or visually interesting. He was just not being where Kor'thax's attacks were, with the absolute minimum effort required. It was infuriating to watch, especially if you were Kor'thax. "Stop moving," the champion roared, which was possibly the dumbest thing anyone had said all day, and that was a competitive category. "That seems counterproductive," Marcus observed, ducking under another wild swing. Up in the viewing box, Ambassador Rodriguez was experiencing emotions she did not have names for. Relief that Marcus was not dead yet? Check. Confusion about what she was watching? Double check. A growing sense that maybe, just maybe, Marcus actually knew what he was doing? Triple check with sprinkles on top. Is he tiring Kor'thax out? Lieutenant Park asked, his eyes glued to the action below. Rodriguez shook her head slowly. "I do not think that is the plan. You cannot tire out a Vex Thor warrior. They have redundant cardiovascular systems and can fight at full intensity for hours." "Then what is he doing?" "I have absolutely no idea, and that terrifies me." Down on the arena floor, Kor'thax was starting to breathe harder. Not from exhaustion, but from sheer frustration. He had trained his entire life for this. He had mastered 17 different martial forms. He had fought opponents from across the galaxy, each one bringing their own unique fighting style, their own biological advantages, their own tricks and techniques. But none of them had fought like this human. None of them had been so boring about it. There was no counterattack. No attempt to strike back. Marcus was not even trying to win. He was just avoiding. Just existing slightly to the left or right of where death was happening. It was like fighting Ghost, if ghosts were medium-height humans in coffee-stained jumpsuits who looked vaguely bored by the whole experience. "Fight me," Kor'thax demanded, pulling back from another series of strikes that had all missed. "Show some honor. Some courage. Attack." Marcus tilted his head, considering this. "Okay," he said. "Sure. If you want." The arena went silent. Even the commentators stopped talking, which was probably a first in the history of broadcast sports across 17 different species. Kor'thax settled into a defensive stance, all four arms ready, eyes locked on the human, every sense alert for the incoming attack. This was what he had trained for. This was where his true skill would shine. Counterfighting was actually his specialty. Let them come to him, let them commit to an attack, and then crush them when they were vulnerable. Marcus walked forward. Not charged, not leaped, not even jogged. He walked at a pace that could generously be described as casual strolling. Kor'thax's eyes narrowed. This had to be a trick, some kind of human deception. They were known for being tricky, for thinking laterally, for approaching problems in ways that other species did not expect. He would be ready for anything. Marcus stopped about 3 feet away, well within striking distance of Kor'thax's longer reach. He looked up at the champion, who towered over him, who outweighed him by a factor of 3, who had 4 arms to his 2 and armor that could deflect most known weapons. "Quick question before we do this," Marcus said conversationally. "Your armor, it is grown from your body, right? Part of your skeletal structure, connected to your nervous system." Kor'thax blinked, confused by the question. "Yes, obviously. All Vexthor have crystalline endoskeletons that extend into protective armor plating. This is basic biology. Why do you?" He did not get to finish the question. Marcus moved. Finally, actually moved with intent, with purpose, with a speed that nobody in the arena had suspected he possessed. His right hand came up in a strike that looked almost casual, almost lazy, the kind of thing you might do to tap someone on the shoulder to get their attention. Except his hand was not open for a tap. His fingers were extended and locked together in a formation that anyone who had ever studied human martial arts would recognize instantly. A spear hand strike, focused and precise, delivered with the full rotating force of his hips and shoulders behind it. And it landed on one specific point on Kor'thax's crystalline chest plate, about 4 inches below where a human sternum would be, slightly to the left of center, at an angle that was precisely 17 degrees from perpendicular. The sound was strange. Not a crack, not a crunch, but a clear, pure tone, like someone had struck a tuning fork the size of a person. The note resonated through Kor'thax's armor, through his crystalline endoskeleton, traveling along the biological structures that connected every plate to his nervous system. And then it reached his main neural cluster. Kor'thax's eyes went wide. His mouth opened in a surprised O shape. All 4 arms dropped to his sides, suddenly and completely limp. Marcus said, stepping back and shaking out his hand. "That actually worked. I was like 60% sure about that." And then champion Kor'thax the Unyielding, supreme warrior of the Vexthor supremacy, holder of 47 consecutive arena victories, bearer of the Crimson Scars of Honor, and probably several other titles that would take another 3 paragraphs to list, fell backward like a tree that had just received some very bad news from a lumberjack. He hit the arena floor with a sound like a chandelier falling in a cathedral, his crystalline armor ringing like bells, like an orchestra playing its final note, like the sound of assumptions shattering into a million pieces. The arena was silent, completely, utterly, absolutely silent. 14,000 beings from 67 different species just stared, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Even the narrator was speechless, which, trust me, does not happen often. Arbitrator Kellex floated down to check on Kor'thax, its tentacles waving in agitation. It prodded the champion carefully, ran some kind of scanner over him, checked his vital signs. He is. Kelix's voice was bewildered, confused, almost offended by what it was discovering. He is alive, breathing normally, all vital signs stable, but he is completely unconscious. Neural activity shows a full system shutdown. How? What? This should not be possible. Marcus shrugged, still shaking out his hand. Resonance, he said simply. Hit the right spot at the right angle, and the vibration travels through his crystalline structure directly to his neural cluster. It is like hitting a reset button. Non-lethal, but very effective. Probably gave him one heck of a concussion, though. Sorry about that.